Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and today we're talking about dead ending into a wildcard. Now to timestamp this, it is currently game week 7, and so if you are watching this video back in future game weeks, just keep that in mind when listening to the content. Now, what is dead ending? So in order to dead end your team, basically what you have is you have a fixed end date for when your team is going to be completely replaced by a wildcard. So this season we've actually got an extra wildcard. It's not actually a wildcard, but when the World Cup kicks off, we get unlimited transfers for the duration of the World Cup. And so our first wildcard out of the 2 wildcards that we have available this season must be used before game week 16. And then our other wildcard will be available from game week 17 and onwards. And between game week 16 and 17, everyone will have unlimited transfers. Now, let's say if you've already used your wildcard, the game week 16 is a hard deadline, right? And so if we were sitting at like game week 14, for example, you know that there's only 2 weeks left until everyone gets unlimited transfers and you're going to get a completely new team. And so the transfers that you make in the last 2 game weeks leading up into that wildcard is effectively you can transfer in players for very, very, very short-term aggressive plays because you're getting a complete new refresh in a couple of game weeks' time. Now, this will be a strategy that will be able to be used for the World Cup in game week 16, but if you also haven't played your first wildcard, you also have this strategy available to you as well. Now, the only caveat being is you have to put a deadline in for when exactly you are going to use your wildcard. So you have to know that I am planning in a wildcard for said date. For me, I am definitely going to be wildcarding in game week 9. I'll go through the reasons for that in a second. But that means for game week 7, the current game week, and game week 8, I've got 1 free transfer this week. I'll have another free transfer next week. But I know that I don't have to buy players for the next 6 game weeks. I can just focus on just this game week, for example. I could buy a player just for this game week and then bench him next game week and don't even worry about him. Or potentially bring in a player that has 2 really good fixtures for the coming game weeks. And then next week I buy another player that's just got that 1 great fixture for game week 8. And then I'm getting rid of them as well. And so the advantages of being able to dead end, there's a couple of advantages. Most players in the game actually decide to wildcard sort of last minute. And when I say last minute, I mean they typically tend to do it. They make the decision to wildcard in the current game week. Now, it doesn't matter what game week that might be, but if it happens to be the current game week, that means the last 2 game weeks worth of transfers, what would probably happening is they were probably trying to fix their team or to try and buy players for the longer term, looking forward and trying to maybe salvage some points. Because if they are already deciding to wildcard in the current game week, that typically means the whole team needs an overhaul. They're more than a couple of hits away from an ideal squad, and their team's looking pretty bad. And so, for anyone that uses a dead ending strategy, you already have those aggressive transfers as advantages in your team compared to the rest of the competition. Now, of course, this does require a little bit of planning, and you do have to know exactly when you want to wildcard. And so for me, my wildcard is scheduled in for game week 9. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. We'll go into them. The first one is I think the new meta formation this year is 3 up front. So I started this season with a 4-5-1. I've now moved into a 4-4-2, but it is becoming more apparent now that we've had we've had 6 game weeks worth of data, 6 game weeks worth of watching football and seeing what's happening on the pitch. And it is clear that the players that are performing the best, more consistently, geez, it took me a while to get that out, the players that are performing the most consistently seem to be in those forward spots. So we're looking at the likes of, most of us already have a Haaland and a Jesus in our teams, so similar to me. But what we're also seeing is the likes of Tony, Mitrovic putting up their hands. Kane is going down in price, but is still performing relatively well. He is a little bit more expensive. Well, the new man at Newcastle, Isaac, is looking, I think it's Isaac or Isaac, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. They're all performing quite well, and so because we've got so many options there, we kind of want to use all three slots because you want to maximize the number of players that are actually returning at the moment. Nunez has just come back last week, and he could also be in contention, and Aubameyang has just signed for Chelsea, and who knows where that's going to lead over at Chelsea. That might invoke a whole new formation switch over there with new players playing in new positions, and we may be scrambling to try and get Aubameyang in our teams. And so that's why I think the formation is switching to 3 up front. There's just too many options in the forward slots that we need to get into our teams. And so a lot of the teams out there, I think, will probably have most of their money spread across the defensive line. This is what's happened mostly in my case. There's a few caveats here, but I've got my 2 staples, Trent and Cancelo. I've got 1 Chelsea man, which is Cucurella and not James. My 4.5 million option was Rico Henry, which I bought in game week 3, I think, to replace Castagna, which has not worked out. He's been super unlucky to miss out on clean sheets and have 2 assists disallowed by VAR across the games that I actually did play him in as well, which is annoying. But I've also got Perisic on the bench. Now Perisic is a rotation option, rotation risk with Sessegnon, who played the majority of the minutes in the last week. Tottenham play Man City this week. They do have a great game against Leicester next week, but I'm not even sure if he's going to play in that Leicester match at the moment because he is being rotated by Conte. UCL fixtures are happening tomorrow and the day after, and so there might be even more rotation in our squads. And so I think moving to either a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3 is probably the best strategy moving forward. And so in order to move money out of my defense and into attack, that would actually require quite a few hits in my team, or quite a few weeks for me to sort out my whole team in order to do that. And the amount of time of weeks that's going to take, I'm actually going to miss out on all the points that I could be gaining right now or in a couple of game weeks when I'm deciding to wildcard. And so I don't want to, extend this out over 4 or 5 weeks. I just want to refresh my squad with more options available to me in order to move around. See, at the moment, I'm looking at Salah, 13 million, not performing very well, and I think he's not performing because of Liverpool's midfield. There's not enough solidity in that midfield in terms of getting the ball through to those front men as quickly and as efficiently as they probably have for Liverpool in the past. Diaz has been super unlucky. He's hit the post about 600 times already. Obviously exaggerating there. It's pretty frustrating having him, watching him hit the post time after time, game after game. But Liverpool's run does turn a little bit harsh in a couple of game weeks, and so he's probably slated out. The 4.5 million goalkeeper options don't seem to be working. I mean, Raya's doing all right because he's actually getting bonus points even when they're losing the clean sheets. Sanchez at Brighton has missed out on a couple of clean sheets in the last couple of game weeks. People are looking at Dean Henderson for Nottingham Forest, which is, I don't know why. Dean Henderson's a great keeper, don't get me wrong, but the Nottingham Forest defence is just woeful. And so we've got to sort out the goalkeeper as well. And so the wildcard is just making sense. I get rid of the goalkeeper problem, take all the money out of defence, put it into probably up front and a little bit into midfield, get rid of the rotation risk players, and we're exactly halfway through to the World Cup in game week 9. So once game week 8 is finished, we have 8 remaining game weeks until game week 16 when the World Cup kicks in. So it is halfway through. It is also an international break, and so as soon as game week 8 fixtures have finished, there's actually a 2-week gap before the Premier League kicks off again, because everyone's away playing for their respective countries. And so you can also play the market across those 2 weeks as well. If you've been highly involved in the game at the moment, the market has been going crazy. Players are jumping by 2 jumps, sometimes even 3 jumps in a week, or looking close to jumping by 3 times in a week. Players are losing value quickly as well. Poor old Kane's dropped in 0.2 million and he's returned like 4 out of 6 game weeks or 5 out of 6 game weeks. Crazy what's going on out there. And so wildcarding during the international break also allows for us to play the market and make even more value in our teams, to be able to squeeze in more players for the future game weeks in the season. Now, that's why I'm wildcarding in game week 9, so I know for sure that I am definitely going to be hitting that button game week 9. That gives me the option for the next 2 game weeks to have some very aggressive strategies going forward. Now, if I bring up my fixture ticker and just go from game week 7 to game week 8, the last 2 game weeks before I am wildcarding in my team. You could do this for yourself as well once you know exactly when you're wildcarding. And just have a look at some of the differential options at the top of the ticker. Now we've got Aston Villa going away to Leicester and then home to Southampton. That's okay, but Aston Villa aren't particularly playing very well, unfortunately. Brighton have Bournemouth at home and Bournemouth away and Crystal Palace at home. Now those are 2 good fixtures, and Brighton have actually been performing quite well. McAllister is on pens for I think about 5.5 million, but is also on free kicks. He banged an absolute, he blasted a goal home he scored a penalty in the last game week, but also he hit a rocket of a shot, top left bins, to get his brace for the game. Absolutely outstanding shot. It looks like he's on some set pieces as well. And so for 5.5 million, in a Brighton side who are not usually known for their attacking prowess, but for some reason this season they are getting a bit more forward, that could be a great differential buy for just a couple of game weeks, because if you go past that, you can have a look from game week 9 onwards. Brighton they're now at the bottom of the ticker for 2 game weeks. They've got Liverpool, Tottenham, Brentford, this is jumping around. Liverpool, Tottenham, Brentford, then Nottingham Forest, so they get good in a little bit. But you'll also notice at the top when we go from 7 to when I'm wildcarding is Newcastle and Leeds have 2 very interesting fixtures. Now Leeds play Nottingham Forest at home this game week. Now in a dead end, they play Man United in game week 8, which is not a great fixture. Man United are starting to put the bits and pieces together and looking like a stronger unit than they were earlier in the season. But if I was to buy it, because I'm dead ending, I could buy a Leeds player for that Nottingham Forest fixture just for this 1 game week, and then just bench him for the game against Manchester United and don't even worry about it, and look at bringing in someone from Newcastle to play that Bournemouth fixture in game week 9. So these are the kinds of things that I'll be looking at. Obviously, I'll wait for the UCL fixtures to be done and dusted in case one of my key assets is injured. Shouldn't be making early transfers this week, in case you weren't aware. There's a whole bunch of games for the top clubs going on tomorrow and the day after. But I'm looking to target Leeds versus Nottingham Forest in game week 7 as my free transfer. And then potentially Newcastle in game week 8 at home to Bournemouth. I mean, these seem like 2 very good fixtures that I probably wouldn't jump on otherwise. I mean, maybe Newcastle. West Ham haven't had a great start to the season so far, but that Leeds fixture against Nottingham Forest, Leeds are a pretty attacking team. They've got some pretty good players in their squads. I mean, but not many people will potentially be looking at getting them in because of this Manchester United fixture in game week 8. Nottingham Forest game week 7 and then Aston Villa game week 9 are actually 2 good fixtures, but this Manchester United fixture in game week 8 might be putting people off in terms of buying them this game week. And this is the idea of dead ending. You have a very short, aggressive time frame to play around with your transfers. So that's the video, that's the content, that's the explanation of what dead ending is and my plans for when I'm going to wildcard. If you had made it this far through the video, please do give it a like, even though I've been fumbling over my words through this one. Give it a like and hit that big red subscribe button to be notified about more content coming your way. And until next time, I'll catch you again shortly. Cheers.